for the very generous introduction. Well, this afternoon I'm going to discuss or share with you one of the studies that I did on the history of Mindanao, and the title of my presentation is Internal Challenges in the Bangsamoro Aspiration for the Right to Self-Determination. In the Philippines, there is a tendency for scholars to just simply say Bangsamoro, Bangsamoro, as if we're referring to, a homogeneous, solid group. But reality check would tell us that there are indeed internal challenges, in the aspiration of these people in their right to self-determination. In 2015, the government signed with a peace agreement with the biggest rebel group in the Philippines, and that was the Moro Islamic Liberation Front. It took the front and the Philippine government 17 long years to eventually come up with a peace agreement. No? This is that development brought popularity in the term Bangsamoro. Philippine government started acknowledging that there is such an identity called Bangsamoro. Before, the government refuses to acknowledge even the term Moro, as an identity among a particular sector, of the Philippine population. And the international community as well acknowledges it. From a term loaded with negative connotations, like, for example, a Moro, a good Moro is a dead Moro. This was actually popularized during the American occupation period in Mindanao, Or a Moro is a kidnapper, a Moro is an enslaver, a Moro is a bad person. This is the negative connotations. But because of the popularity it gained, out of the peace process between the government and the MILF, it evolved into something that evokes pride and identity among the Islamized natives of the Philippines. This development is both positive and negative. Positive because, majority or the majority population has come to realize that indeed there is such a group, who used to be ignored, overlooked, marginalized, but at the same time, it's negative because, as I have said, people have the tendency to think that the Bangsamoro is one homogeneous group, no diversity. But if we look closely into the Bangsamoro, you would notice that they are so diverse, just like the rest of the Filipinos. It's actually comprised of 13 ethno-linguistic groups. You have the Maguindanaon in Central Mindanao, in the so-called Cotabato provinces. This part, the purple one, this is the Maguindanao area. And then you have the Maranao, which is the predominant ethnic group in my region. There are two provinces, Lanao del Norte and Lanao del Sur. You have the Iranun, which inhabits this particular part of Mindanao. This is actually the Iliana Bay, And then you have the Kulibugan. The Kulibugan is actually a group that is mix of the Subanen tribe, which is an indigenous group, and the Sama, Tausug, Maguindanao, Moro group, And the Kagan of Davao, the Kagans are found somewhere here in Davao Oriental, Davao del Sur, And then you also have the Sangil of Sarangani. This is practically the same Sangil group of Indonesia, When the borders between Indonesia and the Philippines were set up, this group of people were separated by the borders. So some of the Sangil are Filipinos, the others are Indonesians. And then you have the Palawani of Southern Palawan, although Sir Fred is from Palawan here, and he said that some of the Palawanis are already converted to Christianity. But traditionally, this group were Islamized, no? According to Professor Rudil. And then you have the Mulbug of Balabac Island. This is somewhere here in the eastern coast, no, of southern Palawan. There's a little island there called Cagayan de Tawi-Tawi, and the people there are called Mulbug. And then the Jama Mapun, this is the part of southern Palawan where the Mulbug resides, and the Jama Mapun are the ones who are living in Cagayan de Tawi-Tawi, somewhere here. And then the Tausugs also of Sulu, the Yakans of Basilan, this is the Basilan Island. And then you have Sama, Ma'am Irma, that's how they call themselves, Sama, not Samal. And then the Badjaus are practically, roaming around the Sulu Sea, no? And just like the Sangil, some of the Badjaus are Malaysians, some of them are Indonesians, because, borders are artificial, no? Before there were nations, before there were states, there were already, groups of people who roam around island Southeast Asia. So that's how diverse the Bangsamoro people are. And each of these groups speaks a unique language. A unique language. Apart from that, it's not only the ethno-linguistic diversity that we are talking about, no? There is also diversity even in the response of these Bangsamoro people to colonialism. Like, for example, you notice this is actually the picture that former President Duterte showed to the international media when he was, being criticized by the human rights advocates as a violator of human rights. No? He used this photo. This is actually a picture of the Buddhaho. Some people, or the Americans, used to call it, the Battle of Buddhaho. But those who see it differently call it a massacre. And indeed, it was a massacre because it was very one-sided. The Moros were only armed with bolos, spears, but the Americans had artillery, etc., etc. No? So that's how they ended up. But on the other side, you notice that these are Moro Datus, Moro Sultans, bearing the American flag. So even the response of the Bangsamoro towards colonialism was divergent even. No? Some became friendly with the American colonizers, the other ones fought the Americans. Divergence in response to the grant of Philippine independence. All the while, many thought that the Moros were against Philippine independence, but there were Moro leaders like Dato Auraya Dianalan in 1926 who said that we are not like Carabaos that Americans pull to one side and Christian Filipinos to another. We have proper convictions and we do not want the dismemberment of our country and the separation of our territory from that of our Christian brothers. But of course, you have here Haji Abdul Kamid Bugabong of 1935 who said, the Moros of Mindanao and Sulu can be compared to a small child lost in the thick forest who does not know where to go. It is not legally right that parents should abandon their child when the child can't yet live out in this cold and cruel world. We are like a calf who once abandoned by its mother would be devoured by the errata there is actually because I copied this into how they wrote the letter. No, should the American people grant the Philippines an independent, the islands of Mindanao and Sulu should not be included. So you see the divergence, no, of the response on the issue of Philippine independence. There is another incident in what's this Philippine history, no, in the more contemporary period, no, we call the Jabida Massacre, which actually triggered Moro secessionism, the contemporary Moro secessionism, which was initiated by the Muslim independence movement of Datu Untug Matalam. Datu Untug Matalam, by the way, was a former governor of the undivided Cotabato province. He was with the Philippine government. But when the massacre occurred, he eventually wanted to, declare the independence of the Muslims in Mindanao. And he called the movement the Muslim Independence Movement. How did the Jabida Massacre happen? Well, there was this territorial dispute between the Philippines and Malaysia, because northern Borneo, there is a territory called North Borneo before. This North Borneo territory was leased by the Sultan of Sulu. It's part of the Sulu Sultanate's territory, but that territory was leased by the Sultan of Sulu to the British North Borneo Company. Okay, and then so for several centuries, the British was paying rent to the Sultan of Sulu until such time that the British decided to pull out from Southeast Asia. So they had to grant independence to the former colonies, and these colonies were to be formed as the Federation of Malaya. Before Malaysia, there was the Federation of Malaya, and they didn't know what to do with North Borneo. But instead of returning it to the Sultan of Sulu, they integrated the North Borneo territory with the Federation of Malaya. And that's how the Philippine government protested. During the time of President Macapagal, the Philippine government filed a case in the International Court of Justice, arguing that North Borneo was a territory of the Sultanate of Sulu, and now that the Sultanate of Sulu is now part of the Philippines, that territory should have been part of the Philippines as well. But the United Nations, I think, gave more weight to the plebiscite that was conducted in North Borneo, and many of the people in North Borneo decided to join with the Federation of Malaya because many of them were Muslims. Many of them were actually the Tausugs of Sulu. Okay, they were thinking that if they are going to join with the Philippines, they will become minorities there. In the past, the Philippines was used to be described as the only Christian country in Asia. I remember the book of Gregorio Saide, which became the main text of many Philippine history classes. The Philippines is the only Christian country in Asia. And thinking that they are Muslims, if they join with the Philippines, they will become minorities there. And that's the reason why in the plebiscite, the ones who favored integration, the Federation of Malaya, won. And the United Nations gave more weight to that plebiscite. And of course, the Philippine government cannot accept that. And what happened was, Macapagal eventually left the office of the president. I mean, he was succeeded by President Marcos. And some sources are saying that Marcos really wanted to get Sabah back from Malaysia. And that's how the so-called Oplan Merdeka was conceived. It was supposed to be, a clandestine military operation that would, conduct sabotage operations in Sabah. And when the Malaysian government would react with force, the Philippine government would come in the guise of, protecting human rights, especially that of the Tausugs who are in Sabah or in North Borneo. And so, with Oplan Merdeka, according to some sources, the recruits, the military recruits, came from the young Moro youths, no? Yeah, from Sulu and Tawi-Tawi. And they were, allegedly recruited and told that they're going to fight godless communists. And eventually, they were recruited, but shortly before their graduation, they were told that their real mission is actually to, conduct sabotage operations in Sabah. And that's how they protested. They said, no, we're not going to kill our fellow Muslims there in Sabah. After all, they are our, fellow Muslims. Some of them are our relatives. And that's the reason why many of them wanted to pull out from the training. But this is supposed to be a top military secret. And that's the reason why, sources say that the government decided to have them eliminated. And that's how the Jabida massacre occurred. No? Moro intellectuals use all these rhetorics, to convince many of the Moros, that they should have a separate, territory for them to be able to be themselves, for them to be able to safely practice the religion and culture, etc., etc. And that's the reason why they conceived of the dream of a Bangsamoro national community. No? And allegations of neglect, discrimination, marginalization, even genocide, fueled the sentiment of many Moros, for self-determination. And ideally, this self-determination should come in the form of independence. Okay? The rhetoric was not new, but the Jabida massacre intensified the rhetoric. It became the fuel, for many of the Bangsamoro to eventually join the secessionist movement. Dato Untog Matalam, as I have said, established the Muslim independence movement. And eventually, this would be replaced by a more organized group, and well-armed group, the Moro National Liberation Front of Nurmiswari. And Nurmiswari, and the MNLF in general, MNLF leadership in general, even intensified the campaign, and used the rhetoric, to recruit more young people. The MNLF appeared to have succeeded in forging a sense of national community among the Moro groups with all these rhetorics that we need a national territory, our own community, our own government, etc., etc. And many were convinced that Islam, as a complete way of life, needs to have its own territory where its devotees can practice without fear or inhibition. The MNLF also appeared to have succeeded in internationalizing the Bangsamoro problem by involving the Organization of Islamic Conference, which was a very powerful bloc because most of the members of this organization are the oil exporting countries. And we know that the Philippines is oil dependent. And OIC actually helped the MNLF haggle with the government when the rebel group eventually decided to negotiate for peace with the national government. By asserting in the rhetoric that the international community was supporting the MNLF's cause, this revolutionary organization attracted many Moros to join the struggle. Above all this, the MNLF also popularized the term Moro or Bangsamoro and transformed its meaning from undesirable to wholesome. It was actually them who said that, no, why should we be, ashamed being called Moros? Because in the 70s, in the 50s, during the American period, if you are going to call Moro a Moro, I mean Moro a Moro, they will really, get mad at you, even, run after you with a bolo or with a spear, no? Because that's really something very negative, no? And according to the MNLF, he said the tenacity with which the natives, the Muslim natives, no, conducted their war of resistance against foreign intrusion was actually a classic exercise of heroism. And that's how the Moro, started realizing, oo nga pala, no, bakit tayo mahihiyang tawaging Moro? Why should we be ashamed of being called Moros when the term Moro, was an epitome of heroism, no? There. So, again, no, you have a very diverse group with very diverse perspectives, but the MNLF somehow, created a sense of unity, a sense of community among them because of the rhetoric, no? And there was enthusiasm on the part of the Muslims, no, over the dream of a Bangsamoro nation, no? And it even looked like there was a strong sense of community already. If we consider the fact that while the Moro groups speak their respective unique languages, the language of the three dominant groups, because of the 13 groups, there are three dominant groups: the Tausug of Sulu, the Maguindanao of Cotabato, and the Maranao of Lanao. Somehow, these three served as media for the various Moro groups to understand each other. Like, for example, in the Sulu archipelago, there are 4 major groups there: Yakan, Tausug, Sama, and Badjao. But because of the dominance of the Tausug, all the other 3 groups can speak Tausug or had to learn how to speak Tausug. And in Lanao, of course, even the Christians there, learn the Maranao language, no? And in the Cotabato area, for example, if you are an Iranun that lives or who lives close to Lanao, that Iranun would be very fluent in Maranao. But if that Iranun lives closer to Cotabato, he would learn the Maguindanao language, no? So somehow the three can actually serve already as sort of national language for the Bangsamoro people, no? But as it is, there was no attempt on any group to insist that their language be declared the lingua franca, for each of the dominant Moro group is proud of their heritage and their language. And that's the reason why, very ironical, that even during at the height of the Moro secessionist movement against the Philippine government, the members of the Moro National Liberation Front had to use Filipino so that they will be able to understand each other. And if the Philippine state is considered as an enemy, they had to use the language of the enemy to level off and understand each other. That's the paradox. That's the irony, no, of this of the idea of asserting the right to self-determination. The paradox is not only visible in the failure to agree or develop a national language for the imagined Bangsamoro community. I remember Benedict Anderson's imagined community, no? In the later decades, the armed struggle of the MNLF would wane down as it faced serious internal problems and challenges, no? Barely a decade after the MNLF started, okay, the organization eventually splintered into several groups. The Moro Islamic Liberation Front of Hashim Salamat, which broke away in 1977. And then you have the Moro National Liberation Front Reformist Group of the Masangkay Pundato, which left the mother organization in 1982. And then you have the Abu Sayyaf Group led by Abdurrajak Abubakar Janjalani, which dissociated with the MNLF in 1991. So the original Abu Sayyaf, we know the Abu Sayyaf is the most dreaded kidnap or ransom group, lawless elements, etc. But originally, they were members of the MNLF who eventually left the mother group. Now, if you are going to look at the surface, in the splintering or in the schism that occurred, you would probably say that the Moros really are the splintering must be caused by the thirst for power of certain individuals, etc., etc., hungry for power. But looking at the ethnic makeup of the factions, okay, you would notice that Nurmiswari's loyalists were mainly Tausug and Sama tribesmen from Sulu. Okay? And then Hashim Salamat, Nurmiswari, by the way, is Tausug. Okay? He comes from Sulu, and therefore his followers were also from Sulu. Hashim Salamat is Magindanaon. Okay? And you would notice that his followers were also mainly coming from the Maguindanao area. And Dimasangkay Pundato and Abul Khair Alonto's men were also members of the Maranao tribe, which is actually the tribe of these two famous leaders. Okay? Hence, the splintering of the original MNLF into three groups was not only a manifestation of the ethnic divides that remain strong within the Bangsamoro communities, it also reflects the personalized and personality-based loyalty. And that's a major challenge for somebody who dreams of a bigger dream of a Bangsamoro community. Now, later on, the MILF would bear another child, another group. No, they call themselves the Bangsamoro Islamic Freedom Fighters. No, if you're going to look at the BIFF, they came from the mother organization of MILF, MILF, but the BIFF broke away with their commander, Cato, in 2010. When Cato left the MILF because he said that, he cannot accept the autonomy formula of the government. He still wants independence. By the way, the MILF eventually abandoned their claim for independence. They settled for autonomy already with the government. And Cato cannot accept that. Okay? But when Cato died in 2015, the group broke into several factions. We have the group of Ismail Abu Bakar, also known as Commander Bungus, who declared an alliance with ISIS, the Islamic, state of Iraq and Syria. And Ismail Abdul Malik, or alias Commander Toraifi, left the group of Commander Bungus because he thought that the latter stance was too moderate. ISIS is too moderate. He is more extreme. And then Ustad Karyalan, or so known as Imam Minimbang, distanced himself from the other two because he and his followers were not swayed by the ISIS ideology, though they remained their dream for independence for the Muslims in the South. So this is how diverse, the perspective of not only ethnic makeup, but the perspectives of the Bangsamoro people. Okay. Even during the time of the plebiscites, there were several plebiscites already conducted with respect to the declaring areas of autonomy in the southern Philippines, in Mindanao. When it was the ARMM, or the Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao, was created in 1989, can you imagine of the how many provinces that we have? Probably 6. Only 4 joined the Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao. Marawi, which is known as the Islamic city of Marawi, did not even join the Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao. The 4 provinces only included Lanao del Sur, Maguindanao, Sulu, and Tawi-Tawi. Basilan, which is another predominantly Muslim, province, did not also join in 1989. Okay? They only joined in 2001 after President Arroyo promised to pour in funds and aid only in the areas that are within the jurisdiction of the ARMM. Very hegemonic, if you would say. No? However, after the government and the MILF agreed to enhance the autonomous region through the ratification of the Bangsamoro Organic Law, which created the new Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao, Sulu voted an overwhelming no in the 2019 plebiscite. Many of the Tausug claim that they voted to opt out of the new autonomous region because they thought it would be dominated by the Maguindanao. So the ethnic divide, the ethnic, some would say conflict, is very discernible in this particular aspect of history. So this is how colorful the plebiscite was in 2019. You see one group of Moro saying yes to BOL, the other one would say no to BOL. No? Fake promises, no to fake promises. You have yes here, you have no there. Okay. And even the Sultanate League of actually, the Sultanate of Sulu has several claimants. There are many claimants. And because of the plebiscite, well, many of them, majority of them, joined forces together to express their, opposition to the BOL. Eventually, they had no option because opting out is not an option in the plebiscite. Theirs was only, the question was only to either ratify or not to ratify. They did not ratify, but the rest of the other provinces ratified. So they were defeated by numbers. Okay? So they're still part of the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao, whether they like it or not. Okay? Ethnic dynamics. Of course, the Bangsamoro are very proud of their Islamic identity, of their Muslim identity. No? And while religion, the Islamic religion clearly says that there should be no room for racism and tribalism in the hearts of every Muslim, the reality is that there is an unwholesome ethnic dynamics among the Islamized tribes of Mindanao and Sulu. And as an illustration of this unwholesome ethnic dynamics, you, for example, try to imagine the impact of this kind of jokes. No? Like in Sulu, there is a very common joke. No? The Tausugs would look down on the Sama. The Sama would look down on the Badjao. And since the Badjao have no one else to look down on, they look down on the fish. People laugh at it, but this is a reflection of society's reality, society's challenges. No? And then, the Mranao, for example, would look down on the Iranon as ignorant, wild, warlike, while the latter regards the former as flamboyant, cowardly, pretentious. These are stereotypes of each other. And this is all haram in Islam. Okay? But it's part of reality. The Mranao women, by the way, are generally not allowed to marry Maguindanaon men. Thus, the expression na, ino amya pangarumas kaniyan sa Mranao or sa Magi, no? Ino amya pangarumas kaniyan sa Magi. Why did she marry a Maguindanaon? The Maguindanaon is Muslim, huh? This is especially true if the Maranao woman is highly educated. She comes from a very prominent family, wealthy family, prestigious family, and then you marry a Maguindanaon or a Tausug or a Balik Islam, a converted Muslim, there's a big no-no. The biggest question that would be faced by the lady is that, why did you marry this guy or that guy and not a Maranao man? Maguindanaon and Tausug also look down on the multiple sultanate system of the Mranao. The Mranao, if you go to Lanao, by the way, Kim, if you go to Lanao, you will see a lot of tarpaulins there announcing the enthronement of this sultan, that by Alabi, and this and this and these traditional leaders. No? But in Sulu or in Maguindanao, you only see one enthronement, the Sultan of Maguindanao or the Sultan of Sulu. Yeah? But in Lanao, you have plenty of many sultans. No? Some scholar like Manuel Tawagon would describe Lanao as the land of 1,001 sultans, no? Because of the many sultans there. The Maranaos are proud of this, but the Maguindanaos and the Tausug would say, your sultan is not a real sultan because your sultan is just a village chief. But the Maranaos would, of course, proudly argue that it is actually the absence of a central Maranao authority that made colonization and subjugation by the Spaniards and Americans difficult. It was our political organization that made it difficult, colonization difficult. So that's the, the debate on the superiority or inferiority, the exactness or inaccurateness of one group's sultanate over the others would be less harmful if they were confined to academic discussions like this. No? But once it began to affect the solidarity of the struggle, okay, the debate became a serious threat to the Bangsamoro dream of becoming a nation. Like for example, Nur Miswari, by the way, is a Sama Tausug of humble origin. But Abul Khair Alonto and other, Moro leaders are of royal blood. And some Moro circles are saying that one of the reasons why some of these people could not accept the leadership of Nur Miswari because Nur Miswari is not of royal blood. And that is a serious problem that the organization, the secessionist movement, had to deal with. Otherwise, splintering, schism, and factionalism will result. And that's what happened to the Bangsamoro armed struggle for independence and eventually, self-determination. Anyway, so the ethnic dynamics among Moro groups was noticeable even in the office of the governor of the defunct autonomous region in Muslim Mindanao. At one time, that office was occupied through appointment, election, or designation by a Tausug. Nur Miswari became governor of ARMM, by the way. Maguindanao, Muslim Sema, for example, Amranao, but mostly by the Maguindanao. During the respective terms of office, each of these governors surrounded themselves with their ethnic group as security personnel and advisors. And one time, Nur Miswari appointed a Tausug Bureau of Fisheries chief in the predominantly Maranao province of Lanao del Sur, only to be met with public protest. The Maranaos are saying, are there no competent, qualified Maranaos to occupy that office? Why does it have to be a Tausug like you? So that's how challenging it is for the Bangsamoro struggle for self-determination. Within the community, there are dynamics that has to be dealt with. There are also conspiracy theories. Like for example, the government gives favorable attention on one faction at a time to ensure that the groups cannot be friends or united. The MNLF in the 1970s, later in the 1990s, and later on when the MNLF accepted the autonomy formula of the government, shifted its attention on the MILF. And that's the reason why the MNLF, at the height of the government MILF peace process, they felt left behind. They felt alienated. And so they took their hands off. They said, we have nothing to do with that peace process. Okay. Sulu Sultanate claimants accused the governments of the Philippines, Malaysia, Australia, and the US to be clandestinely working against the unity of the claimants. But again, whether this is true or not, there are more than 5 claimants. And if they're indeed united, even with or without the interference of foreign governments, I mean, there should have been no problem, no, in the Sulu Sultanate seat. Then stories that talk about the 3 kinds of Abu Sayyaf also abound in the Zamboanga, Basilan, Sulu, and Tawi-Tawi area. Like for example, there is an Abu Sayyaf that is organized by the local politicians, and Abu Sayyaf that is the ideological Abu Sayyaf, the original Abu Sayyaf of, Jan Jalani, and there is the militarist Abu Sayyaf. So whether or not these stories are true, we do not know, but these are what the ordinary people in the Sambasulta area know. So yeah, it's quite challenging. The idea of a Bangsamoro nation comprised of 13 Islamized ethno-linguistic groups of Mindanao, the Sulu Archipelago, and Palawan remains a wonderful concept, but apparently it is an elusive dream in reality. Whether the conspiracy theories that I have just presented have basis in fact or are just products of people's frustration over the government's apparent ineffectiveness or the international community's failure to intervene in providing solutions to the innumerable problems besetting the Bangsamoro communities, the fact remains that the Islamized natives of Mindanao, Sulu, and Palawan are far from being united. If they want to show that they indeed constitute one nation, as said in the rhetoric, they should have set aside their petty differences and not allow external forces to exploit their diversity as generators of divergence and discord. I presented this